Hey, welcome back, modelers. So if you're watching this video, one of two things has happened. Either the algorithms or the playlist has decided that you should be watching this video and you have no clue what I'm about to talk about. Well, if that's the case and you haven't watched The Truth About Decal Silvering, I'm going to link it up here so you can watch that. Now, if you're in the other boat and you've watched that video and you're coming in to see, well, let's see how these different additional things, the things I recommended, how they play out. So some of you have gone in and participated in the chat in here or participated on Facebook, and definitely appreciate it. There's been a lot of good commenting on, oh, well, you know, I think this would make a difference. I think this would make a difference. I'm curious, can you show me this way? And been very, very helpful. Some stuff, not so helpful. Definitely Facebook is a wasteland. So there is some of that. So what am I going to do with this video? Well, we've improved the test. I've gone in and we're going to do the gloss versus matte, but I've created some panel lines and some rivets on that sheet. That was one of the call outs for it. And I did that with a bunch of decals, and then I went, let's take this another step further. Yeah, let's use a full paint mule and have a left wing versus right wing and see what the difference is there. Also, I didn't show you the detail of what happened with the sandpaper test. So we're going to show you what that looks like. But potentially the biggest thing that we need to take a look at is said, well, you know, you're not really doing a service with doing the decal solvent if you've only put one layer. For people that know how to use decal solvents properly, it generally is not ready to go on the first go. So you're going to have to do a few things with it to make sure that it is working properly. You can couple, maybe 6 applications. Maybe some decals you're going to start kind of weak and then move up to some stronger ones. So there's a lot of technique when it comes down to that. And it really doesn't do the full test if you just have one layer. So I'm going to treat all these decals like I'm going to try to give it the best chance at survival and see what the result is. But from there, yeah, we need to do a paint mule. So let's put it on the paint mule, see what's going on with that. So the next section, we're going to show you how I went through the different tests in like 15 speed. If you want to skip that, I'm going to have the chapters in the description. So here we are with our matte, no solvent, but I've come around and did the best I can to try to fix these. Could be fixable. Whether it's worth it, spending the extra time on it, that's probably the more valid question at the moment. But yeah, there's some different things we can incorporate on there to fix. But this, for what we've got, this is about as good as it's going to get. So some of these are not so great. You can kind of see, obviously, dramatic improvement with this decal. Granted, there is some bubbling. This could be part just me. I went too hot with solvents right away, and I should have maybe done something a little bit easier, or I should have attacked it earlier. That could just be me. Some of this, it could just be me not being as proficient with decals as someone else out there. So if you're better at decals, please run this test and confirm that I'm an idiot, or confirm that I'm actually trying and this is just horrible, horrible Revel decals that can never be saved. So that's that. This other horribly old decal, much, much better, but not so great. This Tacom, much, much better, but a few things that just couldn't get the bubbles completely out. So a bit of a challenge. This is the Mang, a few bubbles in there. Then this section I was using the Q-tip. So these are like 50-year-old decals in this area here, and much better, but still not the best. A few different items here. This one, much, much better. And Marines, all these much, much, much better than what we had when I was just applying one. So that part does have a lot of truth to it. I've got still some bubbling. I don't know, it could be just me applying a little bit of a different surface than I normally do. I was using the Mr. Hobby rattle can gloss. I don't know, that's a variable that could be going on. So come down to here where I was using matte and the initial solvent and then follow-up solvents, and it looks a lot better. So I think one of the more important things is that first solvent layer that you're putting on can be very, very important. So you get into a lot of decals. This is actually pretty good for what it is. That's another like 40-year-old decal. Some other ones is a Tamiya decal, worked out pretty well. So if we use like the same structure as the previous video, we have to be a little bit more nitpicky with a failure. Some of the other ones was very obvious what would be a failure, but here, now we're getting into a little bit more of, okay, well, can't quite remove some of that. Have to do a little bit of touch-up work or something to try to remove that. Maybe there's a few things going into like some acid options like leveling thinner and put that on it, and maybe I can get that to go away. But I'm just gonna call it quits and give up because I've got other things to do and better things to do. So you have that. This decal that was old, you can actually see on the camera kind of the outline of the different color to it, but yeah, it was just trash anyway. It's just no saving. So that's the whole sheet of matte. Now let's look at what a gloss looks like. So it's a gloss sheet, and so you'd expect so much better, and I think the keyword is negligible. So just gloss, water, yeah, when it has that kind of surface, coming back over it seems to be better, especially like you see the city of Jacksonville. But once again, there could be some variable like picnic, person in computer, not in person in chair, not in computer issue. So there could very well be something where I'm just doing something wrong, and I would hope somebody with better knowledge could do this test better. That might be the next step. But yeah, so with the solution, I was able to get that better. A few bits that I kind of would still need to do a bit of, a few more touch-ups with it, and kind of go from there. I think also what probably is going to be a little bit better is actually putting gloss over the decal and then flat maybe. that might have a little bit of an effect to be able to get some of the decal film to disappear and some of like the different solvents. So there might be something in there. So if we look at this, so if we take a look at this zoomed out, wonder if you guys can even tell me what is matte and what is gloss. So pretty negligible. There's a few decals where it's like, yeah, that's just nasty. But in some situations, technically, the gloss had a problem more here than the matte. But that was partly me with user error. I was just, since putting 300 decals on there, it's taken up most of my Saturday, so obviously I'm not going to spend 5 minutes per decal. I'm just trying to get them all out there. So there is some warranted on that. And go into like the solvent areas. So in the solvent areas, once again, kind of negligible. I'd have to look at it again to remember which one was matte, which one is gloss. Because technically this one has decal disappeared because it's black. I think it was over here. No, I think it's here. It's gone, whereas you still have a little bit of bubbling in here. And so, I don't know. You guys can let me know what you guys think on there. But let's go on to the next step. Alright, so this is the newer test with good quality decals. And to be honest, I kind of bungled this up a little bit. You can see a bit of problems on here that was user error because I was impatient and I tried to go too hot with the solvent. And if you've ever done that on like good thin cartograph decals, you run into some problems. So yeah, that pretty ugly, not proud moment there. But otherwise, this is the matte side. Looks pretty good. Some weird micro bubbles going on with this and here. This is going to be a Tamiya decal, and I think this is also Tamiya. And so I think just the solvent that I was trying with Display, not so good. And then running over to the gloss side, looks pretty good, but like in total a negligible difference. And you do still have silvering, kind of a bit small bubbles that I'd have to get into and try to pop and go through and spend a bit more effort to get them removed. But yeah, so maybe a slight edge, and maybe I have to do less work on here. I don't know. We'll talk about that in the final reveal. But this was another thing that was wanting to be discussed. So can you put a decal on a matte surface and have it work out? Absolutely. Remember, 220 grit looks pretty dang awesome. Pretty amazing. And yeah, put into all the different grit, big valleys, big peaks, looked very good. So yeah, not a problem there. Alright, and here is our final results with the actual real world scenario. So getting into the actual Mule that we used, and kind of inconclusive, obviously, with saying that one is significantly better than the other. Both decals have a few bits that need to have some work on. So we can see just a few little rivets that just kind of need to be poked, give more solvent. Next up, what I'm going to do is actually put some solvent on some of these Tamiya decals, because they're kind of interesting. I got some bubbling around the edge, but technically if I do that special method, I might be able to just get it removed. And be curious to see how the decals work with gloss versus flat when we're specifically talking about Eduard. But yeah, pretty equal. Now some of this, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, that looks horrible. And you're right. So here I've got this, that's just user error, not anything different with the test. I had too much solvent that just sat there, and it's come down quite a bit. I've let it sit, but it was very wrinkly and everything, and I kind of knew pretty fast that I done messed things up. You could probably touch it up easy with paint, so not the end of the world, but yeah. And if I put a full flat coat on this, I don't think anybody would be able to tell me which one is what started out being gloss, because pretty similar, right? I mean, this gloss, which means that should prevent all decal silvering. However, you got a few little bits that you get into there. So that makes a bit of a difference. Now let's play around with some of the Eduard decals and see how they work.
So high I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world but keep the sky on your mind.
Here is our result. So this is over gloss and worked out well, and it was kind of interesting. You kind of even have a little bit of wear there that has a really cool patina to it. I like that. So, and then other side, same thing, pretty cool effect. Worked actually quite well. So you would expect the flat maybe to be atrocious. Well, there is this one that doesn't look good. However, I think if you're noticing some of my action, I was like pushing like this, and I think that was bad. That may have been just user error. I found it's actually better to be a sideways or even circular and be level, and then just let it work in, and then that works a lot better. So I think part of it is just technique. This one, pretty much flawless. A little bit of flarm there, but pretty good. So I might even play around with the big set and see if I can get those to kind of come off and how easy it is. But definitely want to do this before you put on your varnish. Yeah, made it, had to work through the flat to get to it, and that made it a little bit more challenging, but cool. I was a little bit worried. Some of the Eduard decals were having some silvering, and I was like, oh no, my Eduard, I love Eduard. But once you do this technique, man, that is pretty dope. Alright, so what's our big takeaway from this? What did we learn? Well, I had some fun, so I did put this into a graphical representation and put this into numbers, but it kind of gets weird because when you compare the original result and what we got with more application of decal solvents, much better. So yeah, when you get into the matte with multiple solvents, gloss versus multiple solvents, negligible difference. And so that's what you can see graphically, but you can also see it in the results that we just went through. Now, that becomes the age-old question. Do we need to gloss? Well, this was where we can dispel some myths, right? People that say you have to gloss before decals, or, oh, yeah, you got silvering because you didn't gloss. That's the problem. You need to do this way, and there's absolutes. Well, throw that out the window. Can you? Absolutely. You can apply to sandpaper, and it can actually look good, even though this is a ridiculously horrible surface. So that throws out some things with it. There's all sorts of variables that come into play. If it was so simple as, oh yeah, if you do it on gloss, it would be perfect. This hobby would be a lot more simple. So, do you need to? That's a personal preference. And it comes down to trade-offs, right? So, disadvantages of doing gloss, well, there's a few things with it. When you have additional layers, it could be potentially thicker, and some look so bad it looks like a glazed donut because you've got so many different gloss layers going on it, and you can see this. Especially in the car world, you've seen a few things with that, with automotive modeling. Can look pretty bad. So that potentially happens. There is getting into potentially more layers that you can screw up, right? Potentially splatter or have the airbrush do something weird. So there's more things that can go wrong, potentially. You could also have different reactions going on, either with the solvents or with the different layers or all sorts of different things. So there's some disadvantages of doing that. Now, advantages, okay, well, better surface, technically. You're probably going to have a little bit less trouble with going through the solvents, maybe less amounts of solvents that you have to use, potentially. I didn't know as much of a difference when I was doing the two of them, but I could definitely see where, you know, there's some merit to that. So there is some advantages there. There's also protecting from color shifting when you're going kind of flat and then decal and then gloss. You can have some weird effects that happen there. That's a valid point. If you're trying to protect from different things, especially if I'm getting gung-ho with some pretty hot solvents, it might eat through, and that can be a problem. Maybe you do want to add more protection when you get into weathering and all that. So there's that. Now the other factor is, well, some of you that have a ton of modeling experience, that sways things, right? If you're really good, if you're a master, you can probably do away with it, and you're good enough with decal solvents and you're a pro, you don't need that extra protection. However, some of the new people, I can see why it's recommended. The other thing too, where this came from, that you always got to gloss, comes from the old days when there were really bad decals. And if I'm going to be applying some really bad decals, probably going to gloss. I need every chance I can get to get that decal working properly. And some of them, I was working with like these really old decals. I'm surprised they didn't even just fall apart. But these are probably 50 years old for all I can tell. And yeah, if I wanted to actually use those, probably going to gloss. But if I'm using cartograph decals, man, not so much. Also playing around with the Eduard decals. Those are a little different. Now, do I have to gloss with those? No, not necessarily. I didn't find any difference with them, but to be honest, not an extensive test. I put the flat coat over and it made it harder. What I should have done is tested that before I put on the flat. Let's see, did that as a separate thing. So maybe that's a follow-up as well. But jury's still out on if you need a gloss before you do the Eduard decals with the removing of the carrier film. Jury's still out. Inconclusive data. So let me know what you guys think. If you've got any additional suggestions, anything else you want me to test further, I'm more than happy to do it. And next video, we're going to get into showing you the different decal solvents and testing some popular decals and, you know, see which ones I think are, you know, the best and which ones are trash. Go from there. And then the video after that, I'm going to take a bunch of silver decals and I'm going to go through and show you how I would fix those so it doesn't look silvered anymore. Because yes, it is possible. 50-year-old decals, probably possible, but not worth your sanity is probably my guess. So, until the next video.